Hello fellow makeup lovers, how are you guys doing today? So I'm pretty excited for this video because I'm going to be doing a chatty get ready with me, and I'm going to be using a bunch of products from my September favorites because that's what I'm about to film after I do this video once I'm all ready. But by the time you see this, that video should already be up, so if you want to see my September favorites, that'll be live on my channel, but I'm just going to be using a bunch of those products. However, I probably won't talk too in depth about what I'm doing with my makeup other than like showing a product here and there, because I wanted to go ahead and just really discuss a topic that I was requested to speak on, and that is basically just my tips for learning another language, a second language. It took a while. I really thought about it. I went down and wrote down every step of my journey and the tips and what I took away from that and what I learned, what I did wrong, what I could have done better. And then I figured instead of me just sitting here preaching and teaching, that I would also do my makeup. So quick disclaimer, I am not perfect. I am not a teacher. I do not have a professional background in linguistics. Everything that I'm telling you is based solely on my life experience. If you disagree with any of the tips that I have, that's fine. I think that we all have different learning styles. All right, so starting off my makeup today, I'm going to use the Natasha Denona Gold palette, which I've been loving. And I think I'm just going to show you what colors I'm using really quickly so I don't have to go back and forth. I'm going to first go in with Dijon, this shade right here, and then I'm going to use the teal, and then probably a mixture of those on my lower lash line, and then I'm going to use this shade, Lime Chrome, all over my lid, and then this on the outer V of my lid a little bit, so something along those lines, and then this shade on my inner corner. So the first part of my journey learning a second language began in school, and I started learning in 8th grade because my middle school only allowed you to choose Spanish. That was the only option you had, but you could start learning a language in 8th grade and it would be counted as high school credit. I feel like I did good in school because I genuinely cared about learning the language, and when I grew up in Florida, that's where I graduated and everything, most people wanted to take 2 years of a language specifically to qualify for a certain scholarship, but it wasn't required. From what I understand, seeing people who are international, that learning more languages is considered so much more important, whereas I feel like in America, unfortunately, there's a lot of stigma that everyone should speak English, or it's not important to a lot of people, which I don't understand at all. I don't agree with that mentality. So I felt like my first tip would be, especially to someone who's in America, that it's okay to think that it's super cool. It's okay to be super excited. It's okay to be super passionate and to put your whole heart into wanting to learn another language. It's not silly. It's not you're not some ridiculous nerd. It's an amazing thing, and just because where you are and the people surrounding you might not care about it doesn't mean that you shouldn't care about it if you do care about it. And I think people should care about it. I don't know, I feel like there's peer pressure to feel the same way as people who are around you, and I don't think that you should have to feel that way. My major tip for if you do have the opportunity to learn a language and you're in school is to really just soak everything in that you can and to really get a hold of the basics, because I think that's probably the most important thing you can learn in the classroom. Is basically just the basics of the language, how the grammar is constructed, how to conjugate, and you also have a teacher who can explain things for you, and you can explain exactly what you're missing, what you don't understand. I feel like you can grow from there, whereas if you just start without that knowledge, then it will be very confusing for everything to get into place. I think that it could still happen if you didn't go to school, if you don't learn that. I mean, that's what you do when you're a young kid. You can basically speak somewhat okay of your language before you go into kindergarten. You can communicate because you hear all of that and you can piece it together. So my next tip for the beginning of your journey is if you can't go to school, if you can't you don't have a class available to you, if you can't pay for the class, it is a little bit of a disadvantage because you don't have a teacher who's there to answer all your questions, who has been educated specifically on that subject. But the internet is amazing. You can find everything you need on the internet. YouTube alone, there are so many in-depth videos. Whatever language you're trying to learn, I guarantee you could look it up and you can be reflexive verbs, bam, you'll find an explanation. Conjugating in the imperfect, bam, you'll find an explanation. Like whatever it is, I'm just using Spanish as my examples because that's what I'm used to Googling. Like we're in a day and age where you have so many more options than just reading from a book, which there's nothing wrong from reading a book from a book. That can be very helpful. But if you're a visual learner or if you learn from songs, like I guarantee you will find it. There's also a website, I think it's called TeacherTube, and it has tons of educational videos. Like just for example, ooh, that is so pretty. Okay, sorry, got distracted. I have had the hardest time separating the Spanish and the French alphabet in my mind just because I learned them about the same time. And for some reason I would like start with the Spanish alphabet and I would always finish with the French. Like if I started singing it, like it just wasn't separated in my brain. And so I wanted to take the time to learn the Spanish alphabet better. All I did was Google Spanish alphabet and I found a video of Elmo and Gina Rodriguez, and they did like a really catchy rhythm to the Spanish alphabet. I watched the video like 20 times until I could sing it along with them, and now it's like embedded in my brain. So I feel like anything that you're trying to find, even if it's silly, even if it's something on a kid's level, if it helps you, there is no shame in that. Look at that color. Man, I love this palette. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Physicians Formula Rose All Day Oil-Free Serum as my primer today. And the next part of my journey was a break. And it wasn't intentional, but it was just I graduated high school. I stopped going to Spanish class after taking it for like 5 years. And same with French. I took it for almost 2. But French is a whole nother story. I'm not good at French. Not that I'm counting it out forever, like maybe one day, maybe. But basically I stopped using Spanish, I stopped practicing, I stopped conjugating, I stopped thinking about it altogether. And I'm going to go ahead and go into the Physicians Formula Healthy Foundation in the shade LC1. So what I learned from my break is that taking a break is bad. Obviously, because it's true, if you don't use it, you lose it. I took that break, I lost so much of that, and I think that for a lot of people that can be very frustrating. It's like, oh, I put all this time into it, and then I didn't use it, and now it's just gone. Which I feel like when we get frustrated, there are 2 options, and one is you can either give up, which is what a lot of people do. It's like, oh, like what's the point? I lost it all, like may as well just like forget it, whatever. Or you can be motivated by that frustration and like motivated to do better. So I don't know what I was. I genuinely it wasn't something that I was thinking about. I would say like 2 years without thinking, listening, speaking, reading, writing any Spanish at all. So I lost a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Too Faced concealer in the shade Cloud. But I'm going to go in with another concealer that's a little bit more lightweight. This is the Makeup Revolution Fast Base Concealer, which I'm forever trying to use up. And I'm just going to use that over any acne to kind of conceal that a little bit better without going in with like super full coverage concealer over everything. Okay, so the next part of my journey, I feel like I'm on The Bachelor. My journey. So basically out of nowhere, I got inspired to download the Duolingo app. I think maybe it was because my dad was using it or something. If you're not familiar, Duolingo is an app that has like so many different languages. They even have fake languages, and you can learn it and like practice every day. And there's like a little Duolingo owl who like reminds you that you need to practice, and you like do quizzes, and it like slowly like brings you up. And when you first start, you can do like a little test that like it deciphers how much you already know if you have previously studied whatever language you're wanting to learn. So I got back into Duolingo, and I did that for a while, and I think that was good for me because it inspired me to start practicing again, to start trying again. It made me it made things come back. It made me remember things I'd forgotten at like a pretty easy pace, I would say. So I did that for a while, and I think that's really good, and you can definitely learn from Duolingo. Especially like the main idea is that you have to practice daily, even if you're doing like 10 minutes. Like that doesn't, like it doesn't have to be a lot. So that's what I learned from Duolingo, but I did eventually feel restricted, and I don't necessarily I don't recommend Duolingo if you don't know the language at all. Like if you're trying to just start out of nowhere, I don't think that Duolingo does a very good job at teaching. It kind of just introduces new ideas, new words, and expects you to know them, which wasn't that big of a deal for me for Spanish because it was like remembering things I had already learned. But if you don't know them, if you don't understand conjugations at all, like it's not going to explain it to you. It's more like quizzes. So I don't recommend that if you don't know. Like, for example, I was trying to do some Swedish on Duolingo just because I was inspired by Paulina, her word of the day, and I love like her little phrases and stuff. So I downloaded it again to do some Swedish, and it's just like it expects you to know things that you haven't been taught, so it doesn't make any sense, and I just would not recommend starting there. It's a good way to practice daily if you already have some type of foundation, in my personal opinion. I appreciate the Duolingo part of my journey, but it was just a stepping stone, definitely not something where you just want to stay and like sit stagnant. I'm gonna go ahead and set my under eyes with the Beauty Bakery Better Not Bitter powder. Alright, for bronzer, I'm going to go ahead and use the Fenty Beauty bronzer in the shade In the Sun. So the next part of my journey is kind of really interesting to me because it feels so crucial now looking back, but it wasn't something that I did with purpose. It was just something that happened. Like it was just fate. No, I don't know, but it really wasn't something that I put a lot of thought into. And I remember being on Netflix and like I wanted to watch something new and I didn't really see anything. And I saw this show called The Cable Girls and I read the description. It was in English and I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. So I clicked on it and I started watching it and it was in Spanish. So I specifically remember like watching the first 2 minutes or so and thinking like, this looks really interesting. Like what was happening on screen was intriguing and like it was an interesting beginning to a show. But I was like, do I really want to watch this show and watch with English subtitles? I don't know. Like, I'm not really about it kind of thing. Not that I have anything against watching shows, especially now. I don't have anything against watching shows and just using English subtitles. Like, it's all good. It's just at the time I was kind of like, nah, maybe I'll just look for something else. So I remember like watching other shows and just being like, nah, this is all boring. And I kept thinking about the beginning of Cable Girls, which is actually, it's technically Las Chicas del Cable. Because it was filmed in Spain. It's a Netflix original, but it's all in Spanish. But they have it promoted in English if you have an English account because they want you to watch it, obviously. I kept thinking about it and I was like, maybe I'll try it again. And so I went back and they actually do have an option to watch it with English audio. And so I did it for a second. And by a second, I mean a few minutes. Okay, I need to do blush because I'm like going on and on forever. I'm just going to go ahead and grab the Tarte blush book. And I'm going to use this shade right here called Prim, the one in the middle. So I feel like I'm getting oddly specific, but it really does matter to my story. So I started watching the show with the English voiceover, and I kind of hate that because I feel like the words don't match what's coming out of the person's mouth, obviously, because that's not even what they're saying, and like it's kind of annoying in its own thing. But I was just watching and I got a few minutes in and there was this scene with this very beautiful, attractive man, and all I could think about was the fact that I wanted to know what his voice actually sounded like and not the like fake voiceover person speaking in English. I'm like, I need the truth. So I'm definitely a fangirl, 100%. I like fall in love with people in 2 seconds. So I wanted to know what his voice was really like, and I switched it to Spanish, and then I never switched back. So I feel like even though like I'd never thought about it till now, like that was such a fundamental moment. All because I wanted to hear a man's voice. Oh gosh. That is so me. Watching that show was like the beginning of an era for me because it opened up my curiosity and my intrigue to all things Spanish. And it also, like, there's this really cool feeling when you're like doing something that you genuinely enjoy, such as watching a show, and also at the same time doing something beneficial for yourself and learning. So it's like, yes, I'm watching this, like sometimes like these super cheesy soap opera type things, but I'm literally learning a language at the same time, so it feels satisfactory. I don't even know how to explain it. So when I first started watching shows in Spanish, I 100% always had English subtitles on, and that I had to have English subtitles. Like, I would not have been able to understand it otherwise. And I watched several long shows with English subtitles. I watched Las Chicas del Cable, I watched Velvet, I watched Teresa, I watched most of Lo que la vida me robo, which I still need to finish. I think those are all the ones I had watched at that point. Basically, I watched all of that with English subtitles, and that's like hundreds of hours of listening to Spanish. And I feel like it's a really good in-between time because, like, I'm not stressing myself out where I'm like, I don't understand this, like, I don't get it, like, none of that, because I do have the English subtitles. So it's a good way to, like, slowly tune your ears to hearing the language and picking phrases out and picking words out and noticing when things are said backwards, or like different phrases, how they're translated, and it's not going to be word for word, it's going to be a different thing, but just I feel like it's a non-stressful way to slowly pick those things up. My takeaways from this point in my journey watching shows with English captions would be to make it fun, because if you make it fun, it's not going to feel like work, and allow your ears to adjust. Understanding can take time. It's not something that's just going to happen overnight. I'm going to go ahead and put the NYX olive green liner in my waterline. So I feel like that matches this look really well. And then do some mascara, and I'll be right back. All right, for highlighter today, I'm going to go ahead and use the Natasha Nona Super Glow, which I have in the shade Fair. One of my favorite highlighters. Okay, so for the next part of my journey, I'm going to get weirdly specific again. So I absolutely love and adore Angelique Boyer, or Boyer. I'm not sure. She's French and Mexican, so I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I just kind of wing it every time. And Sebastien Rouilly. Like, they are like the most beautiful couple I stan in real life and on shows, which makes it slightly easier for me to handle because I get so anxious. I'm like, I want them to be together so bad, and I'm like, at the end of the day, they're together in real life, so it's fine. It doesn't matter. But anyways, I loved them as a couple and how they act, and I feel like they have such amazing chemistry. Like, they make love stories amazing. And the crazy thing about a lot of novellas is that they like have the same characters over and over. So if you want to see them fall in love in Teresa, you can. If you want to see them fall in love in Lo que la vida me robo, you can. If you want to see them fall in love in Tres veces Ana, you can. Which I love. I'm very passionate about it. So I had watched the two shows, the first two I had mentioned, and I wanted to watch Tres veces Ana so bad. Like, my whole heart was in it. Like, I want to watch this story. It was like this really intriguing novella about like this girl, which is played by Angelique Boyer, and she's like, it's three triplets, or it's one pair of triplets. There's three of them. She plays all three of them. And like, it's just this crazy story. Like, I can't even get into it. Like, it's amazing. One of maybe this my top two novella. My favorite one that I've watched is Teresa, but I wanted to watch it so bad, and there was like nowhere to watch it. Like, I was so disappointed. I was Googling everywhere, and the only place that I could find was either Univision Now or YouTube. So Univision Now is like $10 a month, and they don't have English subtitles. So I was like, I don't know if I could do this. Like, I was so flustered. I'm like, I want to watch this so bad. Like, I was so annoyed. So I decided to go ahead and try and watch it on YouTube, because YouTube is free and people had like downloaded full episodes. Like, I think the first 30 are on YouTube if you want to watch the show and like not have to pay for it, but that didn't have subtitles at all, but it was free. Free. So I decided to go ahead and give it a chance and try to watch the show without English subtitles and without Spanish subtitles either, which is like another step. Like, it's like it was a jump. It wasn't just a step, it was a jump. All I have left is lipstick, so I'm gonna go ahead and use the Linda Halberry Pink Opal Fantastic lipstick. I have a ton of chapstick on, so it's going to make it more sheer. Alright, so my makeup is all done, but I still have things to say, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep on talking, and maybe it'll be a little bit easier now that I'm not multitasking. When I first started watching Tres veces Ana, it was the struggle and a half. I don't know what I was trying to say there, but basically it was extremely difficult, and I had to be so focused watching the show. Like, I would watch with my volume like at 100%, like as loud as it could possibly go. I would watch super late at night so that there was no kids talking, no animals making sounds, no one trying to talk to me. Like, I could not have any distractions at all. I had to be completely solely focused on my phone and what was being said and listening so intently. Like, it was just a whole experience, and I felt like it was kind of exhausting to watch the show in the beginning, because I feel like this was the pinnacle moment and change for me. I forced myself to listen. I forced myself to hear. Whereas in the past, like, sometimes I would kind of go back and forth, and I would like listen to a little Spanish. I'd go back to I'd turn the English subtitles off, I'd turn them back on, and I would go back and forth. And like I would get to a point where I'm like, oh, I don't really understand what they said, so I would go back and I would turn the English subtitles on. And like, it was because it was an option, I chose that for myself. But with this show, because I wanted to watch it so badly, like, I had no option but to fully listen and to fully like put all of my focus into it. And it did take time. I think I would say probably everything that I watched on YouTube of that show, like the first, I don't know, it was probably like the 20 hours worth, was all extremely focused listening. I would watch one episode a day because, like I said, it was tiring to like force myself and just like listen so intently for a full hour. I mean, I focus all the time, but I feel like it's a different type of focus. I feel like I'm sounding really dramatic right now, but that was my experience. So that's what I did, and slowly I started to hear better. Like, I would stop having to like rewind the same scene 5 times. Like, I would slowly just, like, the words started making sense to me. I would hear it. Like, I remember there being a moment where I was listening and I wasn't fully paying attention, and then after like that scene had finished, I was like, I know everything that just happened. Like, I wasn't doing that intense focus, and I just, like, I heard, I understood, it's hard to explain, but that was the point when it stopped being like, blah, 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 and it started just making sense. It was like a mind-blown moment. I felt so good. Like, once I started like fully watching that, and like I would listen to things on the radio and be like, I know what they're saying. I'm like, I unlocked the key. Like, I understand now. Like, it was like this high from finally, like, it was like this like little like click, like things just went into place and I just understood. I highly recommend it to anyone. Like, if you kind of have that motivation and like you feel kind of stagnant, forcing yourself, giving yourself no other option, but you have to listen if you want to know the information that's being presented. After you've had enough time to like actually learn, like, I mean, if you've never listened to Spanish before, if you never listened to, like, if I tried to go listen to something in German, like, no, I'm not going to understand what they're saying because I've had no background knowledge other than a few curse words. Like, that, no, so that's not going to work for me. But if you have learned the fundamentals and then learned the vocab over time and slowly adjusted your ears, then I think forcing yourself, giving yourself no other option but to listen works. And I think that's kind of the same idea as immersion. When you go into a new place or you go somewhere and your only option is to speak that language or to hear that language, like, that's what you're surrounded by. It, like, that's supposed to be the best way to learn the language. And for most people, that's not an option. Like, I can't just like go take a flight to Mexico. Like, it's not gonna happen. I wish. But that's not the reality of my life. So I feel like forcing myself to watch that show was the closest thing that I had to immersion. Anyways, continuing on from there and from that journey and from like having that hard start and like all of that like focus and attention and like purpose that I'd put into watching that novella, I ended up watching the full thing, and by the end of it, I felt pretty confident in my listening skills, and I could hear and understand, and slowly as time went on, I didn't have to focus so intently. Like, I think like somewhere in the middle mark, I've watched a lot of shows since then, and at this point now, like, I could be like writing, I could be editing, and I'll listen to Spanish in the background and I still know what's happening. It can be a side thing now and I still can understand it, where it doesn't require every single ounce of my attention and like no distractions. So I think even though like when you first start it feels impossible, and I used to like say like Spanish is so fast. So my tip that I wrote down here actually is listen to different regions, and you know, no matter where you go, if you're listening to someone from Cuba or you're listening to someone from Mexico or from Spain especially, or the Dominican Republic or Argentina or Colombia, like, it's all different accents. And some might vary more than others, but I think that listening instead of only like instead of only investing your time in one accent. I mean, that tip might definitely depend on what you're trying to learn, because if what the language you want to learn is like spoken in like one tiny small part of one country, then you probably won't have to focus on a bunch of different accents. But like for Spanish is literally on 3 different continents, so, and that's just like the main ones that I can think of. I'm sure that there's little like spatterings of it elsewhere. So I wrote down fun again at this point just because I wanted to like reiterate that once you make it fun, when you make it enjoyable, I feel like it completely changes your perspective. And for me, I feel like I watch novellas constantly all the time while I'm doing things and like multitasking, and I'm constantly learning new things and I'm improving, but it's so enjoyable that it doesn't feel like a task. It feels fun to do. I'm happy to do it. Like, yes, please let me spend a lazy Saturday watching a novella. Like, that sounds like heaven to me. So I did already briefly touch on immersion and how for most people it's not an option, but I think that you can do like a semi-immersion for yourself where you're just making sure that you're listening to the language that you want to hear all the time. And there's so many different like contents and things that go into your life that you can kind of change. For example, like the news that you're watching, the shows that you're watching, the books that you're reading, the music that you're listening to, all of those I feel like are opportunities to learn more. Something like I lack in is because I love novellas so much. Like if you want to talk about like a millionaire like killing his wife and like leaving her for his lover who's like actually his wife's twin sister, like some crazy thing, like I could tell you that story, no problem. I have the words in my head. But if you were like, what's a pillow? I'm like, pillow. But basically, I feel like if you broaden your horizons, if you make sure that you're not only focusing on one thing so much, then it'll help you learn a more diverse vocabulary because, like I said, from my experience, like I've learned a lot in one thing. I did not have balance for a while on how good I was at listening versus how good I was at speaking Spanish because I spent so much time listening and no time speaking at all. So it's like I could listen and completely understand, but then when it came to expressing myself, it was extremely hard. And the only way that you can fix that genuinely is through practice, which is like duh. So my point here is to don't be shy like me, because I've had opportunities to practice and I didn't because I'm so shy. So I have a hard time putting myself out there, especially because of fear of making mistakes. So that's a tip that I would definitely say is don't be shy. Like allow yourself to get out of your comfort zone. If you have the opportunity to speak to someone in the language that you're trying to learn, even if you're not perfect, take advantage of it. Take advantage of that moment. I assure you that it'll teach you something. And even if you mess up, like, I think that good people will not hold it against you. I hear people make mistakes all the time in English, and I would never judge someone for it. Like, that's so stupid. And it's like, even if you have a weird accent, even if you don't pronounce things right, like, you're learning another language. Like, it's okay. Don't be hard on yourself. So that's something I've taken away from like me trying to practice. It's like, if you have friends or family, like, talk to them in the language that you like. If they speak the language, I don't think it'll be very helpful if they don't speak it. But for example, my brother-in-law speaks Spanish and I wanted to speak to him in Spanish so bad, but I was so shy because I like, for one, like I don't have anything to talk about. Like, what am I going to talk to him about? Like, it's just not me. Like, I'm like, I'd rather not talk. So there was some wine involved during a family game night, but we had a full conversation and I know that I made lots of mistakes and everything, but I swear it helped so much because, for one, it taught me that I can communicate. I can get my point across even if I like go back and like conjugate the same verb like 3 times. I'm like, wait, that's not it. I made mistakes and it was okay. And like there were moments like when I wanted to say something in Spanish and I realized like that my reaction time was too slow. I also have a very dear friend to me now, Lily, who started off just as a subscriber talking to me on Instagram messages, and we started talking about novellas, and she's from Puerto Rico, and like she talked to me about culture and like the political climate of Puerto Rico, and like so like that's just like the beginning, but she helped me so much with mistakes, or like when I didn't understand something, like I could go to her. And I feel like having a friend who genuinely wants to help you, I feel like talk to them. Like, I don't mean like take advantage of them, but take advantage of having that opportunity to learn and to grow if you know someone who's speaking the language that you want to learn. And even if you don't have someone who's like in your life, like I met Lily through the internet, like find find some group on Facebook. Like, I'm sure you'll be able to find somewhere. Just remember, like, not everyone who's trying to help you is trying to help you. Some people just want to feel like, actually, this is how you conjugate it. You're doing it wrong, but I'm right because I know 6 languages. And I'm not saying that you can't correct people if you do know things. I think it's all about the way you go about it and thinking like, where is my heart at? Like, is this tip actually going to help them, or do I just want to make them feel stupid? Which, I mean, I guess if you want to make them feel stupid, you probably don't care that you want to make them feel stupid. You're just going to do it anyways. But anyways, I summed up my entire journey of learning Spanish thus far into 3 different phases, or 3 different like bullet points. So first is learn the basics. Second is to make it daily. I feel like that's so important. If you really want to learn something, if you want it to be part of your life, it has to be part of your life. And then my third point, and the thing that I think is most important, and basically what I live by now, is communication, not perfection, which I feel like is what held me back for so long. Is I was so scared because I didn't want to be wrong, and I was so scared of taking the chance of not being perfection that I didn't allow myself to try to communicate. So it's like, yes, sometimes I make stupid mistakes and I might accidentally make a feminine word masculine, but if you understand what I'm saying, if you know where I'm going with this, if you're understanding, if I'm communicating what's going on in my mind, that's what's important. And, you know, like, I'm not trying to speak at like a professional level or, you know, do all these things. Like, I just want to be able to open myself up to more opportunities and to have that background. And honestly, truth be told, I feel like in the next like 40 years, everyone in America is going to speak English and Spanish. That's my guess. I feel like it's slowly going to be more and more prominent, but I just, like, that's what I tell myself. Like, especially like my last video, like before I started, I just thought communication, not perfection. If I make mistakes, like, it's not the end of the world. Like, it's gonna be fine. And I had so many comments that you could tell a difference in my demeanor and my confidence and the way that I spoke. And like, it's all good. Like, it's not the end of the world to make mistakes. And maybe some people don't need to hear that. Like, I know people in my life who, like, they'll make mistakes and they don't care. Like, it's fine. Like, they're just gonna put themselves out there. Honestly, I do the exact same things in English. Like, I'll say the same sentence over and over. I'll fumble words. I'll mess up. I'll forget what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm definitely, like, all over the place. I know that this video is probably not for everyone, but I was requested to talk about it. And like I said, I feel like I've learned a lot of things. Like, my main thing is just forcing myself to listen, even though I mean, I had a choice. I could have just not watched that novella, but because I did that, I feel like it completely changed everything for me, and it made me so much better. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any tips, please leave it down below. I love to hear your journeys. I know a lot of y'all speak multiple languages or trying to learn more than one language, so I would love to hear. It was actually good for me to kind of take a moment and reflect on my journey because I do want to start learning another language. I kind of beat myself up about it, and then the other day I was like, Amy, you're 22. Like, it's okay. You've got time to learn more. But I think actually breaking it down like this has helped me to think about how it would be the smartest for me to continue in the future and hopefully one day be a polyglot. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.